From FingerLakes1.com and presented by FL1 Radio, I'm Josh Durso, and this is Inside the FLX. Our program begins in 2017 when residents learned that Matt Horn, who had served as Geneva City Manager through the successful DRI application process, would be stepping down and moving out of the region at the start of 2018. His exit set forward a process to find a replacement that some residents felt were neither transparent or complete. That said, at the end of it, they had a new city manager, and it was someone who had a lot of support in the community. My guests this hour are Geneva City Manager Sage Gerling and City Comptroller Adam Blowers. We're only a couple weeks away from 2019, so we're going to look forward and try to cover a lot of ground. We'll talk about that transition period, what it was like working through it, and what both Gerling and Blowers took away from that experience and process. First, though, a quick message from today's show sponsor, Madej Miris and Ricky, the Finger Lakes personal injury attorneys. We'll be right back.
I was severely injured. I was on a ventilator. My husband was scared, and he just went for the nearest number that he had heard advertised over and over and figured they're the best. They know what they're doing. I think that's the typical reaction. But unfortunately, it wasn't the right one. And I'm thankful that we learned that early on in the process. He decided to look for someone locally who would give us a little more personalized attention. And when we met Steve and talked with him, we knew that we had found that person. If you want to feel like you have an attorney who's in your corner, who's going to listen to you, who's going to endeavor to understand you, give Steve a call. I really felt like everyone at Madej, Miris, and Ricky really cared.
For a law firm that cares about you, contact Madej, Miris, and Ricky at 315-568-0911. Prior results do not guarantee a similar outcome.
And welcome back. Thanks, Sage and Adam, both for being here, coming back. It's obviously been a little bit since the two of you have been on. Neither of you have been here together, but a lot to talk about. Thanks a lot for taking the time.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So, Sage, let's start with you. First off, congratulations. How have the first, what has it been, 4 or 5 months or so? How's that been so far?
It's been going well. We have a great team with city staff, and I think in September we had a great, our third triple bottom line training. So triple bottom line, our organization is focused on not only our financial impact in the world, but also our social and our environmental impact. And so as a collective, all city staff, we get together and do either meaningful projects together or focus in on our comprehensive plan. And that day we had a family night, and that was wonderful to be together not only with staff but with family members. And so I think that is something that I'm really enjoying as city manager, is the ability to really dive deeper into all the departments.
And is that maybe one of the more underappreciated facets of the job, is just how important that team is and how crucial the team is, and not just one or two people? That
is correct. There are a lot of departments that are really seeing their role in the larger picture. So say wastewater treatment is not just thinking about what do we do with our wastewater, but they're looking holistically at what they produce and how they can really contribute to Geneva.
So, Adam, I'm going to get both of your perspectives on this, but I'm very curious. As you guys were going through the sort of three-person management period where it was the transition, and what was that like for you, given the fact that you had to, you got to balance the financial side, but then you also have to try and help and steer the city in the right direction too?
Yeah, it was actually really great. We, Doris is the one that really came up with the idea for the three of us, and each of the three of us brought a different area of expertise kind of to that group. And it was, right now that kind of three-person approach is sort of coming to an end or ended now, I really miss it. We had a lot of really good conversations. We had a lot of really good disagreements. And the nice thing about having three is there was always a majority. So we were always able to kind of bounce ideas off one another. It was rare that all three of us came into the room and said, yes, all three of us agree on this exactly. So it was a really good learning experience for all of us. And I'm sad that had to end. I'm very excited though to be working with Sage, and now we've kind of carried that over. There's a lot of times when Sage will say, "Oh, I have this great idea," and then she talks to me and I say, "No, I don't like it at all. It's not going to work." and vice versa. I'll say, Sage, I thought of this brilliant idea. No, we can't do that. So, and then we talk about it and figure out how we can make it work. So really, really great to have the different perspectives, but still the civility to have those disagreements, have those discussions, and really come up with a better approach, I'll say.
Mm-hmm. And Sage, what about you? Was it also sort of that camaraderie, the being able to work together and sort of have three brains to pick from instead of just one?
Yes, it was overall fantastic, and I, in some ways, wish that we could have continued those dynamics. Doris is retiring, and so we wouldn't have been able to necessarily do it in that similar fashion, but we did have Adam take on the new role as Assistant City Manager, and that was twofold. One of it was to kind of continue that idea that I think good government is run by many versus one. But the other side of it is that the economic development role is a big one, and we are sharing that piece and bringing different expertise to the table for that.
So I guess before we jump into sort of what the state of the city is or where things stand right now, we can jump into the economic development part of it. The DRI, obviously a big win for you guys, a big win for the city. That process, though, is a long one. It's not over by any means. So where does the city stand sort of right now? What do the next, say, 6 to 12 months look like?
Yeah, so right now in action, we're wrapping up the adaptive reuse projects. So if you drive around downtown, you'll see one that's very visible is on East Castle. On the east side, you will see a facade improvements. Lynch's Furniture is just wrapping up as well, and they really kind of turn their face to 5 and 20, as well as having kind of a nice storefront on the Exchange side. So there was half a dozen projects that were throughout the city that similar to a New York Main Street project where property owners invested and the state invested, and you can really see that coming to fruition. The Lake Tunnel Solar Village is going to be delivering their first home in about a month, and that's exciting. They've just, their assembly plant is up and running in the industrial park, and so that's underway. And Twisted Rail Brewing, you can't really see it necessarily because it's a lot inside, but they're working hard on there. So we've got the private investments that are moving forward. And then on our side, the larger project is the streetscape, both on 5 and 20 and along Exchange and Castle. And so this last Saturday at our holiday market, there was a collaboration with the rec department and the YMCA. Our Barton and LaJudas team was there, as well as our public art committee, getting feedback on schematic designs for those corridors. And so that one's moving forward. So we are looking at a fall 2019 through 2020 kind of construction period, which will not be so much fun for everybody, but
and that'll be a pretty drastic change from what people are accustomed to, right?
We'll see what yes. Yeah. So we'll be focusing both on some changes in the road, but also in the public space. Something that's exciting for me is the involvement of the Public Art Committee. So when you do public improvements that are infrastructure related, if it's just physical, then you don't necessarily enliven a street. You really need to have the programmatic side as well. And so the Public Art Committee is looking at what is that interactive pieces that will not only speak to Geneva specifically, so that when you have a streetscape, you couldn't close your eyes, put someone into Geneva and say, are you in Seneca Falls? Are you in Waterloo? Are you in Geneva? But really say, no, I am in Geneva. So some of those moments to have temporary spaces for art, or temporary art, and have spaces that could facilitate that, or permanent art as well throughout the corridor.
And Adam, what are some of the parts of the economic development side that really get you excited, or really get you sort of thinking about, oh, this is good for Geneva?
Yeah. So what I like to see is, so I've lived in the city of Geneva my entire life, so I can remember some things from way back when. But I love to see business owners, property owners get the opportunity to really upgrade and update their facilities that haven't had the chance. And so that's the one great thing about DRI, is that it really allows for some of these things that may not have happened otherwise to really happen. So you talk about facades and improvements to the Lynch's building, for example. I know that was a priority for them, but I don't know if that would have happened without something like DRI, because it's just, the opportunity doesn't present itself, it may not be a high priority. Still have a business to run. So improving a facade is not always the top of the list. But I do think that it's really provided the community and everybody downtown just with the ability to see things changing and continue that sort of move forward. So we're not standing still. There's constantly improvements, and I know Sage mentioned about the construction, and I think there's nothing more exciting than something under construction because you know something great is coming. So we try to look at it in a positive light and get excited for these property owners that can really do something with the facilities that they have.
Now, you both mentioned the public-private partnership. How that sort of balances out in the DRI. What has been the reception from the folks on the ground, from the community, from the business owners? Obviously, now that things are starting to happen, probably a little easier to say, see, some things are happening now, rather than it just being an application and a check being presented by the governor's office, right?
Right. I think it's going great. Whenever you're doing improvements in a community, it has to be collective. And so Geneva, with Geneva 2020, for example, with the school district, took on that approach. And I think we tried to also do that in our economic development strategies, but also just our community development, community building approach. So you think about our neighborhoods and the residents. That's a lot of public and private investment. You've got not only time for residents, but energy and effort, either whether they're improving their parks or improving their homes. It's kind of that collective, cumulative effort to create energy together. And I think you always need that because you can't rely on just one agency to take the lead. Because when we've ever done that in my time in the city, nobody has ownership except for city government. And that's not, I don't think, a healthy approach. You always want to share the creativity, share the investment, so that you do build that kind of sense of ownership across the board.
And I have to ask, because I think Geneva is probably one of the best examples in the entire region as far as civic engagement goes. What do you attribute that sort of, it seems like over-the-top civic engagement, like people are constantly talking about meetings, they're talking about volunteer boards, things that you just don't, in other communities, you just don't hear about. What do you attribute that part of that to?
I think it's a collective philosophy. So on our side, city government-wise, we see the advantage of having engaged citizens. And so you have it if it's the boards or the commissions or the committees. The neighborhood work is really handing over the energy and the ownership of a neighborhood to the residents, and we become the support. I think of it, too, that all the entrepreneurs, that's their efforts, say downtown, say Linden Street, is really they're doing the heavy lifting and we're just supporting them, whether it's in the physical improvements or allowing them to close the street. But all of that heavy lifting really comes from the ownership being on the businesses and property owners. But I think it carries over not just in the city side. Hobart William Smith College's philosophy is all about service to the community and two-way learning and two-way engagement. And even Cornell's, a lot of their extension associates are, housed in Geneva. So that focus too with Cornell is also kind of supports that model. So you see it repeating itself through many different organizations and not just on our side. But it is kind of a collective effort, and I think it builds and spirals on itself as everybody's encouraging it. More people step forward or choose to live here because of that.
You mentioned one of the maybe one of the biggest successes that Geneva has, Linden Street. Every year it seems like it gets bigger, better, more impressive, more events. If you were forecasting what you think 2019 looks like, does that trend continue?
It most certainly continues. And I think you did pick up on something. You have now not just the property owners and the businesses there that are doing activity, but you have others coming and requesting to partner with them or to host events there as well.
Coming from well outside of the city even. And is that sort of a testament to just the approach you guys have taken to just including anyone who wants to be involved and just really pushing that engagement?
A piece of it. I don't think we can take full ownership, but definitely that our support does allow for that to organically happen.
All right, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about something really exciting that I'm sure both of you are super, super pumped to talk about, the budget. The 2019 budget.
I know
Adam loves to talk about it.
So, Adam, we'll start with you.
Yeah.
Where do we sort of stand in the budget process? What are some of the big highlights or lowlights, whatever you want to point to? And where does that leave the city moving forward into 2019?
Yeah. So I'll start with our financial position. Over the last 3, 4, 5 years, we've really changed the way we looked at our finances and our budgeting. And so we've seen a drastic improvement, not only with our fund balance, but with fiscal stress. Really just across the board, our financial position and situation has improved. And that's a testament to city council, city staff, everybody involved. There's a lot of moving parts there. And so that allows for the budget process to be somewhat easier. There's always decisions that need to be made, so that's tricky. But some things to highlight for the 2019 budget: there was a reduction in taxes, property taxes.
A reduction?
There was, yeah.
Wow.
So the no increase, not staying the same. It's being rolled back just a little bit. It comes out to about $50 to $55 per $100,000 of assessed value. So if your property is assessed at $100,000, you'll pay about $50 to $55 less in city taxes in 2019. So that was a highlight. That was a priority for city council to we're aware that we have a high tax rate, and they wanted to address that. There were some other things in terms of the regular departments, the DPW, police, fire, finance clerk, all that stuff. A lot of that stuff really stayed the same. There's minor increases here and there, but not too much changed. And then there was some changes in the O&I department. Sage obviously was the director of O&I, became city manager, so that position is open. Council chose to fund that position at halftime rather than full. So we're looking into how we can address that, either if it's an actual person, or if it's something we could talk to a planning firm about. And during our retreat that we just had, we discussed that also and tried to put some priorities together for that department. So a lot to figure out there. But overall, we talked with City Council, and we think we're going to change the way we do a few things with budget for next year, just because we all felt, council included, like a lot of things came out kind of right at the last minute and didn't give council enough time to really think things through, didn't give staff enough time to think things through. So we just want to kind of spread that out a little bit more, and also give the public a chance to speak on their kind of priorities as well. So something we're looking at for the 2020 budget, but that's a long ways away right now.
So Sage, just sort of to follow up on that, obviously you held that position before.
Yep.
Your sort of just surface level reaction to the reduction of it to a halftime, what it could mean for neighborhood initiatives, if any, or if things will pretty much continue as they have successfully.
Well, I think the neighborhood work will continue. That those positions didn't, or there's essentially a person that is half that time on neighborhood focus, and our communication out to residents will remain the same. We will be kind of narrowing in on priorities for 2019 so that we don't have a full person to be able to be diversified as much as that position was. And so we will be kind of narrowing what can be achieved in 2019. And we're doing that across the board. I think we have kind of gotten a very full plate as city staff, and so we worked hard with council to have them start to narrow their priorities so that we could really dive in and be impactful on certain key issues that they're wanting to address.
So obviously one of the items that I think has popped up in headlines from time to time over the last few years is just the property tax situation in Geneva. So if either one of you could just give us an update on sort of how that stands in relation to, obviously you guys were able to slightly reduce the levy, that's a positive. Mm-hmm. But has that part of the problem gotten lesser, or is that still about the same?
I would say it's still about the same. We're really looking for essentially two things. One is to reduce taxes if we can, if it makes sense. If there's things that we can do better or not do for good reason. We don't just want to say, we don't need a finance department anymore. Let's cut all those people and we can roll back the taxes. Definitely don't want to cut the finance department. But the other thing we want to do is really provide as much value that we can for that taxable amount. So if you're going to have high taxes, you should get a lot for it. And, you know, it's happening everywhere that taxes are being increased as expenses go up because the revenues just can't keep up with the expenses. So you're seeing that in a lot of places. But what we really want to do is provide as much value that we can for those tax dollars. If there's more we can do or things we can do better, more efficiently, then we can do more things. So, you know, if it takes less staff time to collect water bills, for example, then we can reorient that staff time to something else and accomplish more. So we do take a lot of feedback from the community and from other departments, you know, interdepartmental feedback, and try to just see what's going to work, see what we can do, what we can't do, and try to provide that value for the taxpayer, because that's really at the end of the day what the goal is.
Right. And Sage, where do we stand with the foundry remediation? Obviously, a big, long process. That's a big, long process.
It is.
Things are progressing there, though.
Yes, they're actually ahead of schedule in terms of the individual properties that they're remediating. And so we've had, weather-wise, good successes, and they doubled up kind of their construction team to be able to do that. And so they're slowing down for the winter, and they'll restart up in spring. Our actual foundry site remediation is complete, and so but the other properties will take several more years to finish. But it is really exciting to be in that neighborhood and see the physical improvements that are happening, just kind of on the, I guess, the positive side of this whole issue and having to work with it. And Jessica, who is in the neighborhood resource office, she's also a resident in the area, has been such a great help of really advocating for the residents and being a conduit if issues do arise.
And it seems like you guys have really taken the bull by the horns as far as getting communication going in the right direction, really focusing on that. How important is that aspect of it been?
That's great to hear positive feedback on it. That's been really important. I think that is something that we always continue to strive to do better and to get information out to our residents. But in particular, in this instance, we're really wanting to make sure residents know about the extra programs that might be available to them, but also the assistance and help.
So a couple items that I think will probably be popping up either in this meeting coming up this month or maybe the next month. Possible changes to the ice rink, I believe, or something, some sort of relationship with the college that could be budding. Walk us through what that situation is all about.
So that's not immediate, but there have been ongoing conversations that Hobart and William Smith is interested in a different kind of partnership with the ice rink. So when they are ready, Dave Sharman and Adam and I and City Council will be involved in kind of those discussions of looking at what that kind of partnership would mean to all of us, and still preserving the public amenities of the skating and for our hockey teams, but also being able to have the colleges have a more robust program.
And then, of course, the American Legion property, a little bit of a discussion about whether to rezone or not to rezone or when to rezone. Where does that sort of sit right now, and what does that look like for you guys?
Sure. Well, I should step back to look at the whole city first. And when we completed our comprehensive plan, one of the big initiatives to work on was to do a complete zoning rewrite. We're looking at an old zoning code that doesn't necessarily keep up with the times and the development opportunities that we have in the city. And so that did rise as a priority for council, which is exciting because it's long overdue. And so the question becomes, how can we get some of these parcels, not only in the American Legion, but kind of larger lots that may be zoned for only single family or maybe industrial, and kind of reboot them. And so we are going to be putting out a request for consultants to put in kind of a two-tier track. What is the cost to fast track maybe some plan unit development opportunities in the city while we're starting the process of the complete zoning rewrite. So council will be making that choice probably in January, which direction they want to go.
So, and then to that end, Adam, I'll throw it over to you. As far as the economic development goes, it seems like having a modern, up-to-date zoning regulatory body is probably pretty important when it comes to getting the latest and greatest in the city, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's tough to... and it's not every situation, but it's tough to have somebody come in, have a cool idea, really want to do something, and then the next step is almost always, okay, you got to go to the planning or zoning board. And certainly those things are going to come up anyway, but I think the last rewrite was in the 60s, so it's time. It's time to update. A lot has changed since then, so we're ready for it, and I think that's a great path forward to really reinvigorate the economic development in the city, not only for businesses but for housing as well, because that's a real priority area for us. There's a lot of lots out there that right now are considered not buildable. And there's, some houses, some people are trending more towards these tiny houses and these smaller houses. So we want to be able to accommodate them as well.
And of course, my last question for both of you is just sort of looking out to 2019. What are you both most hopeful for moving forward into the new year?
Yeah. So for me, and this came up at the council retreat, it's really just finishing what we've started. We've got a lot of things that we're trying to get through, and as soon as we knock one of those things off the list, we're going to jump into one more. So we really want to finish things, but finish them well. And then for the finance department, kind of on a separate note, the big thing for us has been really just improving the internal efficiency. We want to try to get more things online, get some things streamlined a little bit more, reduce the amount of phone calls people have to make, the amount of times you have to come to City Hall, as much of that we can get information out through the mail or through email or on the website will really help, I think, all the residents.
And Sage?
So I guess in addition to kind of empowering our residents and community partners to help us with kind of forwarding our comprehensive plan, I'm most excited about working with all of our staff and really engaging everybody and really pulling out all the potential that is really there. We have, as I mentioned earlier, a great group of people who have very creative ideas and really making sure that they feel that this city is really theirs and they can contribute to it.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time to come in, and obviously good luck moving forward into 2019.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks, Josh.
That's going to do it for us today. I'd like to thank our listeners as well as guests for joining us. Inside the FLX is a production of FingerLakes1.com and available on iTunes, Google Play, and Spotify as a podcast. The program also airs on FO1 Radio exclusively on FingerLakes1.com. Don't forget, the FingerLakes1.com app is your go-to source for the latest news, weather, sports, and breaking news from around the region. Download that today for Android and iOS. For Sage Gerling and Adam Blowers, I'm Josh Durso, and I will see you back here tomorrow on Inside the FLX.